Okay, guys, we're going to get right into this. I am here today with Kirsten Oliphant from Creative If Writing. How are you, Kirsten?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you so much for meeting me. I know it's hard with the new baby to figure out a time that works. This is fabulous.
Yeah, you're welcome. Babies don't make anything easy, but it's really good to be here.
Well, especially when you throw in a puppy into the mix. I saw that and I'm like, oh, she is crazy.
Let's not even talk about the puppy. Yeah. So, yeah.
Too funny. Well, I already gave my audience a brief introduction. Would you give them a little bit more? Tell us more about your site. How long have you been blogging for? What did you do before blogging? All that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I have a master's degree in fiction. So I went back and got, I plan to write novels. And when I graduated from there, it was right when publishing was changing a lot. So, and in the last 7 years, anyone who has put out books on Amazon and self-published your own books, that wasn't a thing, before the Kindle. So in the last 10 years and even the last 5 and 7, it's changed enormously. So I got out of grad school, was planning to write novels, and then we started having kids, and we kept just having kids. And we have 5 kids. So, really quickly, I realized that novel writing was just not something that was something I was really super able to do. So I had started blogging, but I didn't really, for a long time, realize that this was sort of like a public representation of my writing, and that if I ever did get published, people were going to find this site. It was just a journal. That's how people started blogging 10 years ago.
Yes. Have you been blogging for 10 years? I didn't need to jump in.
I have. Yeah. My first blog was 12 years old, but I accidentally deleted it. And it was just pictures. And I say just, okay, but I wish I had that now, because it was the 2 years I was in grad school. I just took pictures and uploaded them and didn't say much, because I was like, why would anyone want to read about my life? That's weird. Right. Because no one, it was the very beginning stages. And so, yeah, I've been blogging for 10 years. Maybe, what year is this? I have to think about these things sometimes. Yeah. Okay. So, I've been blogging for 10 years over at KirstenOliphant.com. It had a new name before that. And it's just basically, now it's more parenting. It looks like what you'd maybe expect from a blog now, which is, a little bit more polished. It's got Pinterest friendly images, but it's kind of parenting and food and that kind of thing. When it started, it was literally just, I posted a million times a day, and it was here's what we're doing at this very moment, because social media wasn't a thing. So now we all do that on Facebook. And I was on Facebook, but you didn't do that so much then. It was not the Facebook of today. So when I finally realized, hey, I'm not writing books, but I'm writing all the time on this site, and people are reading it, I should probably care a little bit more and pay attention a little bit more. And there's ways to monetize this. So if I'm doing it anyway, why wouldn't I make money also? And I started doing kind of sponsored posts and ads and the things that you sort of do if you're a blogger and wanting to make money. And I really didn't like it. I liked the money, but I really hated having to run back to Walmart to get that hero image that I'd forgotten and that they had to email me about because it wasn't quite there. And who wants a picture of Walmart on their site? Yeah. Let's be honest. So it just drove me nuts. And I started to feel I was okay, I think I lost my way a little bit. And so I kind of took a little break. I didn't stop blogging, but I stopped doing any of the monetization. I took the ads off my site because they just weren't pulling in the money that I felt like they should for being on my site. And right. I stopped doing sponsored posts, and I went to a writers conference, and it had been so long since I had connected with writers, just because I was I can't do real writing right now. And while I was there, suddenly it became apparent to everybody that I knew how to do all this stuff. I remember there was a Pinterest session, and Pinterest was oh yeah, old hat to me. I was I don't know why I'm even in this session. Everything was I already knew it. And people around me were groaning, and they were oh, I hate this. I'm just leaving. People walked out of the session because they were I can't handle this. This is ridiculous. I'm not doing it. And I was why is everybody freaking out? But it was because the person speaking didn't really understand how little people knew. And so I became the go-to person. In the breaks between sessions, somebody would ask me a question, or I would start talking about something, and people would gather around, and I had all these follow-up emails from people afterwards who were please explain the internet to me. Please explain Twitter to me. What's going on with Pinterest? I don't understand. How can I use Instagram? And it was really kind of this new thing. I was oh, I don't think I realized how much I knew from all these years of blogging and all of this. And I felt it could really translate well to writers who just don't want to do it or don't understand it. And so I started the Creative Writing podcast about 2 years ago, thinking that it would just be mainly for writers and trying to help them kind of with that platform aspect. And then, have some inspiring things. Like I wanted to interview authors as well. And as it turned out, because I had so many connections in the blogging world, my audience is really like 60% people who call themselves a blogger first and 40% people who call themselves a writer first. So, that doesn't really go well with the whole like targeted audience thing. But I'm also, while I would recommend people having one person, this is who I have. And I'm kind of the person who's out of the box a lot. So we're out of the box a bit with that. For me, what has been sort of the key that goes through it is authentic platform building, building an audience of people who really want your stuff and doing it without using smarmy tactics. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years at Creative Writing. I've got a podcast. I've got a Facebook community that I just adore and have done some online courses. And yeah, I've done a lot of stuff. Run a summit. It's been kind of crazy, but a lot of fun.
Yes. No, you definitely have. I recently found your podcast. Danielle Liss, who I actually had as a guest myself, had recommended it to me, and I love it. I'm surprised by your number that it's not even larger, more bloggers that are listening to it. You just do a fabulous job, for sure.
Thank you. It's so much fun.
Yes. So you kind of touched a little bit on it. What would you say the toughest part about being a blogger for you was?
I think, so I feel like I have to put it in two categories. So there's the me as a blogger when I was just doing it for me, and that there was nothing tough. I just loved it, right? So it became tough when I started doing it for money. And I think that's where a lot of people stumble, because you think what I thought, I'm doing this anyway, why not make some money? Or a lot of people, now that it's more common to make money, kind of get into it thinking I'm going to do it for the money. And if the love isn't there, like if you really aren't passionate about it, unless you're literally putting the food on the table for your family, it's really hard. It's really hard to do. It can be really soul sucking. And so for me, it took up all this time. I remember one time distinctly ruining our family vacation, like just ruining it. And I was so used to blogging every day. I just am not an editorial calendar kind of person. Like sometimes I'll make general, like, okay, we're doing this kind of this month, but mostly I just write when I want to write. And I didn't plan ahead. And so I was blogging every day. I was taking pictures and trying to upload them every day and do blogging in real time while I was at the beach with my family. And even though it was kind of like I was doing it during the times where everyone was like watching TV, so I was like, oh, it's okay. I just was so disconnected from my family. And then I did have, like, of course, a sponsored post, or maybe even two. I think I had 2 different vacations that sponsored post just made my life stupid. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like I want to be walking on the beach with my husband. My parents are here watching the kids. We could for once go out without our kids or asleep, Right. And there's someone there to watch them. And instead I'm doing this sponsored post for, a paltry amount of money when you consider the scheme of things. And I don't need it. Like I'm not the breadwinner right now in our family. I don't like that term, but I'm not the one feeding our kids. I'm not the one paying the mortgage. So why am I ruining my family vacation? So that's, I think, the hard thing to me is finding the balance and really not losing your way. Or we all lose our way at some point. I think it's really easy to do. So finding your way back. But it's a good lesson. I mean, that was a huge lesson for me of what learning to, balance doesn't really exist, right? We're always sort of tottering from thing to thing, but at least trying to prioritize and really think about like, okay, this isn't my real life, right? So why am I going to give it precedence over my real life, and trying to figure out what that looks like?
Yes. No. And I think too, when you have to do, we talk about writing all the time, you get into a zone, and it's almost, and for myself, like if I'm in the middle of writing something and I know that I need to get it done, it has that added stress. So if there's an interruption where someone comes in, asks a question, there's a phone call, it totally throws me off. And I can imagine being on vacation that it would just, yes, been there.
Totally. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I'm able to blog and podcast and I put out some nonfiction books. I can write that way and get a little bit interrupted and not lose it. When I write novels and I get interrupted, it's like a totally different thing. But that's the thing where like you have to really plan. And with kids, I know you have kids as well. Like I just don't work when they're home because I'm miserable and I make them miserable, and I don't want to be the mom. I don't want them to remember their childhood as me, like the grumpy mom that they're always bothering.
Right.
Because I know that I feel bothered and I act bothered when I get interrupted. So I just try to make it like a non-issue by not doing it if they're home.
Right.
So.
Yes. No. And that totally makes sense. So now where do you feel your strength lies?
I think, so this may sound a little bit weird. I worked in a church for years, and there are these like common tests that they'll have you do if you work in a church, or even sometimes I think we had like, I did youth ministry, like we had the youth do this and stuff. It's called a spiritual gifts test. And it's not a personality test, but it kind of like helps you figure out where you're good at serving. And, a lot of it's stuff like teaching or service or giving or compassion. So it's not like the beaten path of like, you're good at, working in an office. Like it's a little bit outside that box. And, I almost always get the highest. It's been a while since I've taken one, but every time I took one, my highest thing was shepherding. And I was like, what is that? That sounds really weird. But shepherding is actually this really cool thing where it's kind of bringing a group of people together and then taking them on a journey. And I see this in my friendships. Like I see how in my life, I tend to gather people together, sometimes even unlike people. And then when I leave, it all falls apart. Like the friendships are not, I'm sort of the center hub where I kind of connect everybody and make it this thing where otherwise these people wouldn't have talked. And I feel like this has really played out in terms of community building and in the things I love to do, where I really love, I'm an introvert, so people exhaust me, but at the same time, I really love working with them. And I love seeing people get from their point A to their point B and helping them along the way. So in the Facebook community I have, which is not huge, and I'm actually really scared for it to get bigger. Like as it's grown, I'm like, oh no, it's getting bigger, because there's been such a great connection, and the people, we know each other, and because I have such a diverse audience, I feel like the thing that brought everybody together is not like, okay, we're all in this niche, but we value this sense of authenticity. We value this idea of growing without compromising, if that makes sense. And so I feel like I've gathered a diverse group of people in terms of what they do, but they value is the same. And that's kind of what the core is. And so I think in that group, just seeing how that has worked and hearing people give feedback about the community and like talk about this Facebook group, and then just seeing people have those light bulb moments and move forward and send me emails or shoot me messages and saying like, I finally got over this hump and this is what helped me do it. It's just, so I feel like that really applies. But, the other thing is like, I kind of touched on the authenticity, where I feel like I kind of am a no BS person, and I am pretty straightforward about some of these things, and even sharing the things. Like one of my popular posts was the biggest, how much was it? I'm trying to think the money. I had a money label on it. I think it was $1,300, my $1,300 mistake of 2015. Okay. And I shared, like, here's where I really screwed up and invested money and shouldn't have. And really that's not a ton of money, but it felt like a lot of money to me at the time when I was just starting out my business, Yes. And so, those are the kinds of things I'm willing to share. And I think those are really my strengths, and what draw people kind of into the podcast and into the community.
I love that. I love that you talk about that it's based on your personality, because I think a lot of times we think about strengths as like social media or our writing or where we're putting our work. But the fact that it's your personality, and I do think for me especially, like I made a shift back towards one of the huge personality traits of mine, which is being a teacher. I was a teacher for so long. And going back towards that, it has opened up I'm back to who I was. I think you become that person and you're just happy and content in what you do. So I love that. So tell me a little bit. I'm really excited about the download that you have for my audience. So let's talk a little bit about social media, because social media can make me really like want to shake at times because of all the changes and all the algorithms. And on the other side of it, I also love it. Like I have always been one that I love to get on the newest platform and try it out and see how to work it. So what would you say your favorite social media platform is?
Oh, this is hard. Favorite? Okay. So it depends. I'll say that. Yes. I really don't want to like Facebook the most, but I do. Like if I'm being honest, the Facebook tab never closes. Like it is always open in my browser. Although I closed it for this, so I'm not getting notifications in my ears all the time. Yes. But the Facebook tab's always open, and it's because of the group really. And I love the interactions that happen in there, and I want to be present. So I think that's been the most rewarding. So not so much pages, which just make me crazy. And I just kind of gave up. I was like, you know what? I'm going to post what I want. I don't care if my page grows. I'm going to use my page basically as kind of a bookmark. Like, it's there. People can find me. I can run ads through the page, but I'm not going to spend my time and energy to try to win over Facebook. I just don't have that in me. So I guess Facebook groups is what I would say. But I also love Pinterest for traffic driving, and that's my favorite for that. And Twitter, I have not been super active on. I feel really bad because Twitter has been where I've made some of my best connections, which is really interesting. But it's not a traffic driver. So like, I've been super busy this last year. I've had to really cut back on several things. I stopped doing Instagram because there was just no ROI there for me. It wasn't bringing people to my site. I wasn't making connections. It got really to that point. I joined early. So then it got to that point where it was like, follow for follow, and then I'll unfollow you. And I was like, I don't have the energy. Again, like, it's not bringing anything to me. Yes. I already have a community here. It's not bringing me traffic, so why am I there? So Twitter and Instagram, I kind of have them there, but I sort of stepped back. But I kept going with Pinterest because it is my number one traffic refer for my sites, both of them. And then the Facebook groups for that sense of community.
Now, the Facebook groups that you're talking about, are those closed Facebook groups where people would actually have to ask to get into?
Yes, they're not secret, they're closed. But right. I have a problem. I think I'm the moderator or owner of like 26 groups. Is that bad? Do you have more than that? I wanted to hear from someone that's like, no, I have 50. I'm sure there's someone out there.
I'm right around there too.
Okay. It's a problem. It's a problem I have. But I get an idea and I'm like, this would make a great Facebook group. And then I create it and then I'm like, why? So some of them are like not super active anymore. Or some of them were kind of like a pop-up group. Like I had a challenge that there's a group there. And if I run the challenge again, they're all there and I can try to get the group back up. But I haven't posted in there since the challenge ended, and if I were a good person, I would, or if I had a better, if I had a VA, then she could do that. You could do that, but
yes. Yeah. I love that you talked about the pop-up group because Amy Porterfield just recently is doing one for B School. And I just found it so intriguing because I've seen a ton of just interaction and being the ability to get to know people within that closed group. Because it's kind of like when they ask to get into the group, Facebook then actually starts showing them stuff rather than hiding everything.
Absolutely. Like the page. It's like the opposite of the page. Like they start getting notifications. Although I don't know why Facebook does not always send me notifications of my own groups, which drives me crazy.
Okay, it's not just you. I was wondering if I had my settings set up incorrectly that I wouldn't know that there's posts going in. Yes, that drives me nuts.
Totally. I have to actually go into my group manually often and just scroll to see what I've missed because I do not always get the notifications. And it's super frustrating because I want to answer questions. And just yesterday I was in there and I swear I scrolled and I found a post that was 9 hours old that no one had even commented on. And I was like, I totally had an answer for this question. I'm sorry I didn't see it 9 hours ago when you posted it because Facebook didn't send me a notification.
Right. So. Yes. I always tell within my group that if you have a question, you need to tag me. Just tag me, even if it's not just meant for me. Just tag me so I know. Because it's super frustrating when you can't find it. So the platforms that you named are very similar to the ones that I kind of push off to the side. Instagram, I wasn't actually an early adopter. I held off on jumping into it because I was a teacher at the time and all the kids were talking about Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't want to get found. So I didn't jump out.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah.
Yes. One of the ones, though, that I loved for the longest time is Google+.
Are you still using it? Because everyone's like, it's dead. It's kind of like a ghost town. I think you have an enormous following over there.
I do have an enormous
hundreds of thousands of people or something crazy.
Over 600,000 people. It's so nuts. No.
Nothing. Does anything happen when you post there?
No, not at all. And it's hard because I'll have people ask me questions about it. And that was when it was up and coming. I did tutorials on it. I loved that platform. And now I'll have people ask me questions and they're like, well, doesn't it help with SEO? And I'm like, okay, I know they tell you that. I know Google supposedly loves what Google does, but it's not helping. I'm not seeing, you don't understand how this kind of fires all together. It's just not working the way that they said it was going to. So no.
It's such a shame. And I think we've all been there. I really loved Blab, and Blab had a short run, and then they just shut it down, which was a really weird move. But anyway, they had a really weird post about what they were doing and why, and it just didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I was like, I think you should have not posted this, actually. Like, maybe it would have been better without the explanation.
Right.
And that, especially if you want to work again and do things, because it really made a lot of people angry. And then Vine, I think about, we were just watching a YouTube compilation of Vines, and I was looking at these people like Batdad, who had this huge Vine presence. And I'm like, I'm sure he's doing something now still, but like that platform was so perfect for what he did. Like Batdad, I mean, maybe he has a longer YouTube channel, but I don't see how this would really be that funny other than like a 10-second video.
He puts them together is what he's done. The only reason I know this is my husband searches for him because he finds him hilarious.
He's really funny,
yeah. And my name is Jen. So every time Batdad yells Jen, my husband yells Jen. And I'm like, seriously, I'm just going to whack you in the back of the head. But
it's so hard when you like build these things, this whole like life on a platform, and then it goes away, which is why like ultimately, like, and this is a cheat because it's not social media, email is my thing. Email is totally my thing.
And it's smart.
Yeah, because you keep everybody and you just don't know. And of course it doesn't seem like platform, Facebook, for example, is not going to go away. I really don't think it will, at least for a long time, but they could make a huge shift. Like they shifted Pages and it just screwed everybody up. Or, Google Plus, I mean, that's owned by Google. That's a big deal. There were a lot of people on there. And so for that to just suddenly stop working like it did, we don't have a lot of control over social media. So I think it is really important wherever you're connecting to make sure you're getting those people into something permanent, like your email list. Like it's just, otherwise, if Vine goes away, what are you going to do? Well, you could find a new platform, but if you can't tell your people where you are, what good is that going to do you?
Yes.
So
love that. So now tell me a little bit, the download that you have is about the best strategies to use for social media, right?
Yes. So it's called Seriously Simple Social, and it kind of is a breakdown of the main platforms. I didn't go everywhere, and I'm trying to think when I created it. It'll need updating. Like I may have to like update and like email everyone that downloaded and be like, and here are the 5 new platforms. I think actually while I was making it, one of the platforms went away. And I was like, well, there goes those pages that I spent all this time on. Right. So basically, it kind of talks you through a general idea of social media strategy and then talks through the different platforms and who might or might not want to use it and kind of some tips and best practices. And it has links because not all of them, like I talk about Snapchat, but I don't really use Snapchat. I have it on there and I joined and was like, okay, I see why some people use this. I see my nephews and nieces using it all the stinking time, which makes me kind of not want to use it in some weird ways because it doesn't feel like my space. And I have friends who are my age that are using it, but it just, to me, didn't feel like my space. So for that one, I talk about what it is. I talk about best practices and share a lot of links because I'm like, this isn't my jam. So, like if it's yours, awesome. Think about your strategy. So I ask kind of the same questions for each platform too, for you to think about, okay, what's the purpose of these? What tools can you use to make this easier? So if you're using several platforms, you can know kind of how to make it easier with apps and tools too.
Perfect. And that it's funny because that was one of my next questions for you is, do you feel that they all work for everyone? Like some of us do food. It's so funny too. Like I find with my accounts, certain platforms are perfect for only very niche specific aspects of what I do. So Instagram, if I post anything about my family, any kind of crafts, it like everyone unfollows me and they hate it. As long as it's food, they're happy. It's crazy.
Wow. That's so really weird. Yeah, yes. I think the thing with the different platforms, so I have seen people from a variety of different niches and kind of backgrounds be successful on different platforms. Like I've seen people with food be great on Instagram. I've seen people with lifestyle posts and who are just posting quotes, which I find bizarre. But anyway, that does really well on Instagram. I've seen a variety, but it's kind of like you have to connect with those right people, right? And when you think about how many people, I mean, at the last number I read for Instagram monthly users, it was like 400 million. And I think that was a couple months ago, so it's probably more now. So chances are your people are on Instagram. But like in your case, you may have gotten followers who followed you because of the food, so they don't want the other stuff. And so that's another thing we have to be careful of in thinking about strategy is, and that's totally okay, but you just like, you're smart, you realized, okay, I got to stop posting this unless unless my strategy is I want to get rid of all those people who just want food, and then in that case, I'm just going to flood it with my kids and crafts and get all those food people out of here so I can have the people who are here for whatever I want. So it is, I think you can be successful on different platforms. There are certain things that work better. Like, so for example, for my writer people out there, if you're wanting to traditionally publish, you want to be on LinkedIn because that's where all the publishers are. Okay. If you're an indie, so that means you're self-publishing, and that's kind of the term that people are using now because I think self-publishing had such like negative connotations, like, oh, you're just publishing it yourself because no one will buy it. Well, no, that's really not the case anymore. So they like to call themselves indies, and they are everywhere else. Like they're not, they might be on LinkedIn, but they're not really, because they're not trying to connect with New York publishers. They're not trying to connect with those big names. They are trying to connect with readers. So they're on Facebook. They're in Facebook groups, not just groups of authors. If they're smart, they're in groups of romance book readers if they're writing romance. So they're in a group that's not writers, not bloggers, a group of people who read romance novels, if that's what they're writing. So I do think there are some basic good principles about that. But, when you look at Pinterest, a lot of people thought that was just food and crafts. It's just for women. My husband's on there. My husband, the other day, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm on Pinterest. I was like, I find this weird, but okay. And then he actually he had his 40th birthday, and he had guys over, and some of this with the night, and crashed our house, and we had this crazy like poker party and all this stuff. And one of the guys came in for a few minutes and was doing something on his phone. He was like, oh, I'm going to send you this from Pinterest. I'm like, why are you at a poker party on Pinterest? And he was looking up something totally bizarre, like some kind of memes. And I was like, is that even on Pinterest? And he was like, yes, this is all I look at. And so you really can find everybody everywhere. But some of the platforms do lend themselves more towards certain kinds of audiences, and you need to find your audience. So it may take some testing. It may take trial and error. You may find like, oh, shoot, I accidentally built this audience who only wants to look at food photos. And I'm just keep saying that because you said it, not because I think you made a mistake there, but just because that's a great example of a problem people have. It's a common problem. I've accidentally built audiences before, and I'm like, well, that's not who I want. Like, I really wanted somebody else. And then you kind of have to make that choice. Like, okay, I could either revamp and kind of make this platform work for me and start posting the kind of content that my audience I really want is going to come to, and then I'll drive all those other people away, or maybe I'm just going to stop using this platform because everybody that's doing this is over here. So I think people really are on a lot of these platforms. But, again, Snapchat is going to lend itself to a younger audience. Yes, there are people who are my age. I'm almost 40 in there. We're the exception, not the rule. Right. And marketers will go anywhere that stuff is happening. So they're flocking to Snapchat. We'll see, I think Snapchat, I don't know. We'll see. Again, you just don't ever know what's going to happen. And it's been around for a while. It's doing great, but I don't know. And the other thing is the young people leave when the old people get there. So Facebook is now like the old people's thing. Like my nieces and nephews are all on Snapchat. They're all on Instagram. They have Facebook accounts that they really don't check. Right. They're not like me with the tab always open. They are like, oh yeah, I should check. It's been a few days.
Right. So but they're constantly on Snapchat. Yes.
Absolutely. Like every second of every day they're on Snapchat. Like there is not a time that they're not on their phones. Well, I say that makes them sound really bad. That's not true. I always see them like out of school. I see them at like fun functions. So it's like different. They're not always on their phones. But yeah, when they are at fun functions, they like check constantly to see who's sending them snaps. So
yes. No, Snapchat is actually one of the ones that my sister-in-law, who is she's somewhat of a blogger, hasn't really taken it seriously kind of thing, forced me to get onto Snapchat. So, and I was on there early because she was like probably one of 10 people that was using it at the time. So yes, no, it's definitely, and I feel like I go through these phases too, where like Snapchat was perfect for me because I felt so restricted with Instagram where I couldn't share any of my kids. So Snapchat became where I got to let everyone see my kids and the real behind the scenes of what goes on, not just the beautiful picture that took me an hour to shoot. So
yeah, and I think that's the other thing, what you just touched on about choosing the platforms that work for you. It's not just about where people are, because you really could probably find a niche of just about anybody on any platform. what do you want to create? Because if you want to do on Instagram, I mean, they have stories now. And so you can be a little bit less perfect there. But if you want to do well on Instagram, you have to have pretty photos. And if you don't want to take pretty photos, then don't try to make it on Instagram, because that's just how it is. Like, that just is. And that's not changing. And so you can't build your whole thing on stories. And some of the stories are really beautiful too. I mean, Instagram just is much more visual. So if that's not your thing, don't do it. And the same thing with Pinterest. If you don't want to take the time to either, you know, for my lifestyle blog, it's taking food photos. And I did that yesterday. I found this recipe I loved, and I was like, I'm making this today. Like, I found it in the morning. I made it twice yesterday and blogged it last night because I was like, I'm obsessed with this. But it took getting out the DS. I was like, oh, let me dust off my camera, you know, and editing photos and putting them in that perfect Pinterest thing. So it makes, I researched, I went and looked on Pinterest. Like, I made it. So it's these 2 ingredient pancakes. It's cream cheese and eggs. The end. That's it. And I was like, this is perfect for low carb diets, and my kids love it. So anyway, I went and searched like pancakes. How do people style pancakes? So this is what it takes. And if you don't want to do those kinds of things, then you don't do it. And like I said earlier, I don't want to do what it takes for Facebook pages, not groups, but for Facebook pages, what it takes is constant supervision and posting. And it's like a little child, and you just can't leave it alone. You have to watch it. You have to interact with it. You have to do stuff with it if you want to grow your Facebook page. Yes. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to put a post up. No, that's not going to work for you on a Facebook page. So you have to kind of know what each platform takes to be successful, and then decide if you're willing to do it. So you kind of have to think about where people are, what you are willing to do, like what work you're willing to do to make it, and maybe figure out like, okay, I'm not great at photos. Well, and Instagram and Pinterest too, but you could use stock photos depending on what you're doing. If you're using them from a good source that has, you know, the Creative Commons and all the licenses, not taking photos you don't want to and getting slapped with a lawsuit.
Right.
You need to have their permissions and everything, but you can do that. But I think the posts that tend to do the best on those platforms are not the stock photos. It's the ones you're taking yourself. And so it's important to think about where your audience is, and also what work you have to put in, and can you do it? Do you want to do it?
Yes. So now, obviously, with all these different platforms, they all take time, especially if you are going to decide to be on Facebook and you need to be posting 27 times a day. Do you use any, scheduling tools? Do you have any favorites that you recommend?
So I'm kind of old school in some of the ways. So I'll share. Here's the annoying thing. There's no one magic tool. Everybody wants a magic tool that's going to do all the platforms well. There isn't one. There are a few that do a really comprehensive job. Coschedule is one that I don't personally use, but it does a lot, and it goes right into your WordPress site. It has a really fancy, pretty calendar. But a lot of the platforms respond better to certain tools. So Facebook likes Facebook. They like you to be on Facebook. They like you to post. Now, I know I talked with Laura Fuentes of Momables, and she has a huge following, and she says she experimented for 6 months at a time with her Facebook page, which has a big reach, and posted natively, like within Facebook, because you can schedule within Facebook, right? Yes, so scheduling and all that right within Facebook. Then I think she tried it with maybe Buffer and then Edgar, and she said the best results were from Edgar.
Interesting.
So now that may not hold true for everybody though. Right. And Edgar's like a $79 a month tool if you are joining now. It used to be last. That's what it is now if you join. So that's kind of an expensive experiment for me. So Facebook, most of the time I'm native. Okay. Even in my groups, you can schedule in there, but I feel like if you're a group owner and you're trying to promote engagement, scheduling is not usually the way to go. At least you could do 1 or 2 posts a day, but you need to be in there posting. So Facebook, I stay on Facebook. Pinterest, I think it's really important to, and Instagram too, you want to use the kind of API approved. And that basically means that those platforms have said, yes, it's okay for kind of this information to cross the lines over here and cross the borders. And I'll get to Instagram, why that's super important there in a second. But for Pinterest, I use Tailwind. Yes. I have a friend who's a Pinterest manager, and so she's like, can I just use Board Booster for your Pinterest and experiment? And I was like, I don't care. It's more pins. That's fine. Like, do what you want. So she's using Board Booster on there. And then I'll do native pins as well. Like, so I'm not doing, I don't know how many pins I'm doing a day. I'm really not the planner. I don't do the editorial calendar, but Tailwind is really my favorite for that. And they also do Instagram now too. Yes. I've not put them up there. Because again, I'm not doing Instagram that often, but I did sign up for Later with Instagram, which allows you to I have 2 accounts, and one I'd started to grow, and then I was like, I don't have the energy for even one Instagram account right now, much less 2. But if I go back, I'm going to try Later because you can toggle between them easily. And somehow my Instagram app has not been letting me toggle easily. So that's why it was so much harder. But Instagram is super important to go through those API approved. So Board Booster really isn't. Tailwind is approved. Ahology is a free tool. So if you're like, I want to schedule to Pinterest, I don't want to pay. Ahology, it's AHALOGY, is a really great tool. And I've met Susan, who works for them, and she's amazing, and just they do a great job, and they are integrated with Pinterest. So you want that. That doesn't mean Board Booster isn't effective, but it can mean, that's just not good in the long run. You want the things that are approved by the platform. Right. In the same way, Instagram, right now, they don't let you schedule. And there are some rule-breaking scheduler things out there that will actually post for you, and you don't want to use those because they can shut down your Instagram account. Right. I don't think you want that. So, but I just find it annoying for the Instagram schedulers. They just remind you to post. Like, you set it up, and then, Instagram is so funny to me that it's become the beautiful platform, because doesn't the name sound like it should just be those in the moment photos? Doesn't it sound like it should actually be Snapchat, Instagram, but it's not. Right. So I don't really use those schedulers, but if I did, I would use Later, because I like the layout and the things that they have offered. And there's also a really great one called Iconosquare, where you can kind of do the analytics for Instagram. As far as Twitter, I do Hootsuite, and I almost never go to Twitter itself. But Hootsuite, I've created this whole thing where I have all these lists of different people, and the view, you can have Twitter lists on Twitter, but the view in Hootsuite, it's like this long thing where they've got the list here. So I can say, like, here are my writer posts, here are my blogger posts, here are my entrepreneurs, and I can kind of just scroll through instead of seeing this really busy Twitter feed. I have obviously not everyone I follow is in these lists, but as I started growing bigger, I started putting people into those lists so I could see, like, okay, this person has great content. They're posting a lot. I'm going to put them here. I have a local Houston one, so I can see what my people are up to here locally and retweet for them. And so Hootsuite has really made Twitter manageable for me. So I think those are kind of the big ones for me, like Facebook within Facebook, Hootsuite for Twitter, Tailwind, and a little Board Booster for Pinterest, and then Instagram I'm not really scheduling, but Later is a really good one.
Okay. Yeah, those are primarily the ones. The only other one that I use that's a little different is Recurpost, and I use that for Twitter, and I actually use that for my Facebook groups so each day I do like a prompt, and that's the only thing that I use that for. And
I think that's a great way to do that. Yeah.
Because it just recycles the content too, which is what I love about it, especially for Twitter. I just want that content to be going out. I can schedule other people's, my own. It's great. So
I actually do. I forget about this one. I use Social Jukebox, which is kind of the same as Recurpost, where it's like a content library where you set up your post, and I forget about it, so I forget to do it. So it's got like the same 30, and I have like all these hundreds more posts, and it's free actually up to maybe 100 posts. Okay. And you set it up and then say how often you want it to go out, and it just keeps recycling that content. And so that's a really good one for Twitter, except for right now when I'm not on Twitter much, it just looks like I'm the biggest jerk who just cares about myself, because my whole Twitter feed is like all those posts because I haven't been posting on there. So that's the downside, is you forget that that's happening, and then you're like, oh, I just posted 45 in a row of my own stuff. Like, that's not the best.
Yeah. No, I totally, yeah. So one of my favorite questions to ask are, what are your projections for 2017?
Oh, that's so hard. I always feel like I'm asking other people, because I'm like, someone smart, tell me what's going to happen. It's always been the year of the video, so I feel like live video is just going to continue to get bigger. I think some platforms have shut down, and I think there are going to be some new ones coming in. That would be my guess. Or even some ones that are around. Like, Snapchat was around for a long time before it became what it is now. Like, I think when it first came out, like, I don't know if I'm alone in this, I heard of it as like the app to send sexy photos. Like, that's what it was. Like, like, why are marketers on that? Right. It was around for a long time before it kind of morphed. And so my guess is we're going to see kind of a rise of those things, a rise of some new platforms, because I feel like it's kind of been a while and there have been some spaces that have opened up. I'm a little nervous that Facebook is going to do something to groups because so many people are using them because pages don't work as well.
Yes.
I know they're in beta doing ads in groups, which I think is interesting because it brings up this problem of like, okay, I'm seeing so many more ads. I don't know about you, in my Facebook profile, everywhere. There's just so many more ads than there used to be right in my feed. And if those start to happen in groups, and, with Facebook ads, you can target. So like say some group member of mine, and I don't let people just spam up my wall.
Right.
They're like, oh, well, I can't spam up the wall. I'm just going to target an ad to the group. So then every time we go into my group, that group member has these ads that they've obviously targeted my group. Then do you kick the person out? Well, you targeted my group and it feels spammy. I just think there's a lot of weird repercussions for that. And so I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but I know that that's in beta, so it's probably going to happen. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like. I do also think I think we're at a point where we've reached, I don't know, there's just a lot of similar things out there. Everybody is doing webinars, everybody's doing courses, and I think there's going to be a big shift because I think that market is so flooded. And I've seen a difference, 2 years ago when I started doing, I dove in. I was like, I'm just going to do everything. I don't know how to run a webinar. I'm running one next week. We're going to do it. And I'm going to figure out the tech and I'm going to make it happen. And I did. And I had so many more people, even though my list was so much smaller than it is now. So now, I had a live training last night. And I tell everybody in my email list, you can join, in my weekly email, I'm like, hey, I'm doing a training, click here to join. And so then it tags them. I use ConvertKit, so it makes it so easy. Yes. So it tags them, and then I can just email those people. So I had about 200 people, both some new people and then people in my list who had chosen to kind of register, I guess. And it was such a small percentage of my overall email list and such a small amount of growth, and so few people showed up live. A ton of people watched the replay because you can track that if you leave the YouTube, you leave it in YouTube as the replay. But I'm kind of like, I don't have the time to dedicate to doing live trainings if you guys don't come. And, it was something people had told me they wanted. So it wasn't like I just decided here's the topic I want to do. Show up if you want. It was like, this is what we want. And so I do think there are going to be, I think we're in a transition where we're going to start to see people doing new things. Summits are kind of big, but I feel like that's already getting so flooded because that's even harder than a webinar for people to attend, because instead of 1 hour that you set aside, you have all these sessions. And, as a person who runs a summit, I can say that it's hard for people. And so I see more and more and more and more and more summits popping up everywhere. And I think they're going to flood out for the same reason that workshops and webinars do, because people just don't have the time to dedicate to watching that much video.
Yes.
So I would love to see the continued rise of audio. I'd love to see the continued rise of that, because people can listen to the podcast while driving. They can listen to it while doing their dishes. They can speed it up and listen to it faster, right. Versus sometimes I'll sign up for webinars and I almost always do the replay because I have 5 kids and the times never work for me. But I hate it when I watch a webinar back and I can't speed it up. You have no speed control.
Yes.
That's super frustrating. So I feel the pain of people who can't do that. So I would love to see the continued rise of audio. But I do think we're flooding the market out. So I feel like this is going to be kind of a transition year. And then we're going to start seeing what's the next new thing that works. And I'm not always the innovator who's going to here's what it is, Jenny. But right. I can tell you that when I see something that looks like it's going to be the new thing, I'm going to jump on it, because the things I'm doing now that were working well 2 years ago aren't working as well now.
Yes. No, I totally agree. So now tell everyone where they can find you. And I want you to go touch on your summit too, because the summit's coming soon.
It is. And you're speaking at it.
I am. I'm excited about it. Yes. So when and where can they find all the information for that?
Okay, awesome. So Creative Writing is my site where I kind of have everything. And you can connect with the Facebook group there. You can sign up for my email list and see the different things and hear the podcast. And I'm actually going to look really fast because I always forget. So the summit is the Profitable Blogging Summit. And I always forget, and this is terrible, if we have a "the" in the URL or not. And I should just figure this out because it's my site, right? But that would be way too easy. We're going to make life more interesting by having to look it up on the phone.
Of course.
Right? Yeah. So I think it's just profitablebloggingsummit.com. But there is a Facebook page for it, which we just made because we were like, we really have to have, and this is the thing with pages and groups, you kind of have to have that public face, which is the page. So we made the page for it. But it's coming in April, and it's going to be a really just killer lineup of bloggers and experts. We have the people from AdThrive coming to talk to us about ads. We have Jillian, who, if any of you guys use the Milo tree pop-up, she's the creator of that. And she's a powerhouse Pinterest user, which is why she kind of created it. So we have, and Jenny, obviously you're coming. We have some really, really great speakers coming that are talking about how to be profitable, but also kind of Paula Rollo from Beauty Through Imperfection and I are doing it together. And our whole thing is like just keeping this idea of making money, but without selling your soul. So really, you don't have to worry about getting icky. I mean, we've even said, I like this person, I like their content, but I think what we would get is some icky sales tactics. And so we said, nope, we're not asking them. And so it really is going to be like that. We're making different tracks this year. So there'll be like a video track and a track on social media. And it's really going to be a killer lineup. I'm super excited. So that's the next big thing that I'm working on right now. But yeah, you can find that at Facebook at the profitablebloggingsummit.com. So
perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, Kirsten. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, it was great to be here and really fun. It's always fun to talk shop. So I love talking to other people who like get me. Because when I talk to my husband, there's just like this glazed like, yes, I understand.
Oh, I get that look all the time.
I'm like, just listen for a minute, just nod like you understand, because I just need to vent to someone. And he's like,
yeah, sounds perfect.
So this was great. I really appreciate you having me on.
Of course. Thank you so much.